Here I have a photo of Prince, a photo of Coolio, a photo of Tom Petty, a photo of Mac Miller, and a photo of Lil Peep. Now, you may recognize the names of all these famous musicians and realize that they have that in common. They're all famous musicians. You may also have realized that all of these famous musicians died in recent years of overdoses. But that's not the most specific thing they have in common. These photos were taken at their final performances before dying unexpectedly to accidental fentanyl overdoses. Accidental fentanyl overdoses are a huge problem in the United States, and I think it's something that we all should be much more aware of and cautious about. Today I'm going to get into the seriousness of the threat of fentanyl overdoses and how we should all respond. I'm going to start with some statistics. Fentanyl overdoses are a huge threat to otherwise healthy Americans. According to Snopes, when fact-checking a Fox News report and confirming the report, fentanyl overdoses have surged to the leading cause of death for adults between the ages of 18 and 45, according to an analysis of U.S. government data. To put that into perspective, that's more than all-cause firearm mortality, and for those ages, that's more than cancer, heart disease, all other forms of accidental death, and so on. But to understand the fentanyl crisis best, I think we need to get into the nature of how these overdoses occur. Ben Westhoff is an investigative journalist and the author of his book, Fentanyl Incorporated. In his appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, he said, basically any pill or any powder, if you didn't get it from CVS, your pain pill, or from a pharmacy that's legit, it could be cut with fentanyl, and that's how Prince died. That's how Tom Petty and the rapper Mac Miller all died. I think it's important to understand that these fentanyl overdoses are not necessarily suicides. According to the NIH, about 5% to 7% of these overdose deaths are recorded as intentional. That's a lot less than I personally expected. To put that into perspective again, with another form of accidental deaths that we're much more aware of, USA Facts put together a report based on CDC data, reporting that 54% of all firearm deaths are suicides. This graph is organized from top to bottom. It's hard to read, but ascending from top to bottom with age groups. The blue portion right here corresponds to suicides. So for people aged 15 to 19, suicide makes up about 34% of all deaths, ascending to people in their older years, firearm deaths being much more portion of suicide. The rest of this pink portion right here is the category of homicide, and that tiny little sliver is categorized for other. Now, with fentanyl deaths, that category, that sliver on the right, would make up over 90%, and the category is unintentional. If fentanyl deaths were intentional, I think this would be a very different problem. We would have to consider that perhaps a lot of these deaths that occurred due to fentanyl, because they were the will of some party, may have occurred due to some other substance or some other method of murder or killing, whatever it may be. But these fentanyl deaths are unintentional, and the root of the cause is that people don't know that there is fentanyl in what they're taking. I once heard the phrase, "Let the problem guide you to the solution." I think this is a very wise phrase when dealing with, problems. The problem in this case is that people are taking drugs, people are letting people around them take drugs when they aren't all absolutely certain where those drugs came from. The solution is simply not to take drugs when we aren't absolutely certain where they came from. To be clear, I don't advise taking drugs unless advised by a physician that is reputable and certified. But I do have to consider the fact that humans, for all of history and all parts of the world, have been consuming drugs recreationally. So, with that in mind, I'm going to rule out the possibility of humans stopping taking drugs as a whole. However, if we know exactly what vectors these unexpected fentanyl overdoses can come through, I think we can address the problem effectively. Pills, powders, and injectables are the forms of drugs that are most likely to be laced with fentanyl. The DEA's campaign One Pill Can Kill focuses on pills, particularly pain pills like oxycodone. To compare that to something like marijuana, for example, according to Medical News Today, there is little to no evidence to support these reports. This is speaking on reports of marijuana laced with fentanyl. Some groups claim fentanyl-laced cannabis to be a myth. Furthermore, they've established a rationale for the safety of this drug as compared to pills and other things. As fentanyl remains more expensive than cannabis, fentanyl-laced cannabis would not make financial sense, according to Medical News Today. Now, it's worth noting that it is certainly possible to lace cannabis with fentanyl. Same with psilocybin mushrooms or any other natural form of a drug we can think of. It could even be contaminating a drink, and a very small dose could kill. But the focus is pills, powders, injectables. Those pretty much comprise, if not all, the vast majority of deaths due to fentanyl overdoses. So again, the most practical solution is found by further defining the problem. And the problem is people not being exactly sure what they're taking, so we shouldn't take things if we aren't exactly sure what it is. By erring on the side of caution, there's a lot of ground to be gained with this issue. The more cautious population, I think we can imagine a safer world. People like Prince, Tom Petty, Coolio, Lil Peep, Mac Miller, they would likely all be around today had it not been for a lack of cautiousness and awareness about the possibility of fentanyl overdoses between them and the people around them. Furthermore, I can think of 2 people that were exactly in my grade that I grew up with that died recently of fentanyl overdoses, specifically in pill forms. Neither of them intended to do so, but both of them were horrific tragedies that could have been avoided had there been more awareness, more caution regarding the way we consume drugs. In fact, I would go to say that most of you viewing this video can think of someone that you once knew that died to a fentanyl overdose, probably in recent years. I want us all to imagine a world in the future where these sorts of deaths could mostly be avoided simply by us changing as a society, our perspective toward fentanyl and other sorts of potential laced drugs. So, the future with the fentanyl crisis begins with us. Despite there being all sorts of political campaigns, things we can do, things we can change about sourcing drugs, legality of certain drugs, there's a lot of debate to be had there, but ultimately I think it's most specifically in our control to do what we can with the people around us, and that's where we should start. I'm calling on anyone who sees this video to do what they can to raise caution and awareness about fentanyl. Again, the fentanyl crisis in America is a very big one, and we need to be more aware of it. Encourage people around you. If you see a pill and you don't know where it came from, encourage people to be cautious, and please don't leave your own fate to chance. Thank you.